in the world in 2026. All right, let's get to our next our conversation now. Small and medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of Africa's economy, driving innovation, creating jobs and fueling growth. But building sustainable MSMEs, that comes with, unique challenges, access to finance, market reach, and a capacity building. And now explore how entrepreneurs and policymakers are working together to empower African MSMEs, for long-term success. And see how the MSMEs have performed in 2025. Joining me for this conversation, I have Obianuju, Nwaobi-Onyekwere, Chief Financial Officer, Manifold Computers Limited. It's great to have you on the show. Compliments of the season.
Thank you, Ladi, for having me here.
So what would you say were the biggest, challenges for African MSMEs, in 2025? What do you think stopped them from achieving, sustainability, and growth in 2025?
Thank you, Ladi, for that question. I was really excited to see the growth that the billionaires of the world were able to add in 2025. And that made me ask myself question that we had MSMEs. Anyways, the numbers are not out, so I can't really speak whether they achieve this level of growth or not. But looking at what we see as we interact with these businesses closely, now the challenges that they face, many of them, when you speak with them, they usually would think that finance is their problem. But when you dig deeper, you see that it's access to market that is actually the challenge. And interestingly, that gap is also being filled through capacity development and also through making sure that they are actually understanding the market that they serve by becoming more innovative, doing better marketing, communicating the value that they bring. So the top of their list, if you ask them, they will say it's finance, but digging deeper, we see that it's a structure problem and it's also an innovation and marketing challenges. Because once you are able to communicate, package the value that meets needs, and then you are able to have a formalized structure for your business, you can actually get access to finance. Truly, access to finance is a challenge, but it's not the number one challenge from our own assessment.
All right, so, definitely bringing it down to Nigeria, tomorrow is a countdown now. The new tax laws take effect from January 1st. 2026. In your view, is this going to add, wind to the sail for MSMEs in Nigeria, or are you seeing, confusion? What are you seeing with the new tax laws coming up?
So what we'll see is that the masses, the MSMEs in particular, are actually quite confused. There's been a lot of communication out there from the fiscal committee, but the trust is just deficient. They are not believing them, and everybody is kind of trying to wait and see. And they're also relying on professionals that support them. They tend to trust the professionals more than what they read or listen to in the news. So 1st of January, the new law kicks off. For MSMEs, the bulk of those businesses, so based on the statistics from the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Trade, we have 37 million MSMEs. Over 99% of that are micro businesses. And these micro businesses are businesses that have less than 9 employees, you see. And in terms of revenue, I will put their revenues as below 25 million. So for this set of businesses, their tax burden is actually very little, but yet they are worried. And the reason they are worried is because they have not been in the tax net. And when something is new, you're trying to get into the net and you're not trusting the system, and you're also anticipating growth in your business, you are kind of concerned. But I believe strongly that once the system takes effect and they begin to navigate it, those concerns will go away. Now, speaking about the smaller businesses that have less than 50 employees are categorized as smaller businesses. And then in terms of revenue, their revenue has to be typically less than 100 million. So for this set of people too, their tax burden is really minimal in terms of VAT. However, depending on the incorporation vehicle they have used, so let me say they've incorporated as a company, then for them, if their revenues are less than 100 million, they really do not have CIT burden, which is company income tax burden. However, as individuals, they will need to file and remit their taxes to the states where they are residents. So that is really the only tax burden that these micro and small businesses will worry about. Speaking of the medium-sized businesses, these are really like the big elephants, right? Once your revenue is above 100.
This is the quickest way to go from AI beginner to AI fluent in 2026.
This set of businesses that should actually be concerned about their level of compliance, and we have been engaging, and there has been assessment for some of this business, and has been roadmap on how they can optimize and also improve their compliance framework. Based on the statistics I mentioned before, 37 million, 36 are micro businesses, about 64 million small businesses. Then we just have 4,000 medium-sized businesses. So you see the disparity between these three categories that were put together that we call micro, small, and medium. So it's only about 4,000 businesses that really needs to do an impact assessment. And that's what they really need to do to see which of the taxes they haven't been compliant, identify the gap basically, and then create a plan for boosting and enhancing compliance.
All right. So, in trying to, enhance compliance, for the medium businesses, do you think it will cost them more to get, the education they need, the right consultants to help them, navigate this process? Should they put a budget together for that?
So interestingly, there's been a lot of resources out there, but people prefer to have one-on-one, because when you consume general content, it's really not as helpful, especially when you're not a professional. So most of the firms that have interacted with have free consultation. At least the very first consultation that you have is usually would be free, which they call tax health check. They really just want to check what your compliance levels have been. So it usually would be free. So I would encourage medium-sized businesses to assess those health checks, because after the health check, you're given what you should do. And what you should do, most of those things are actually things you can do for yourself. For instance, file your monthly VAT returns. It's really how much have you sold, and then go to the portal where it has been designated and file those returns. So there are easy things that have been doing. Even the institution, the Nigerian Revenue Service, as it's called from tomorrow, also have free resources across the social media channels, even on the portal itself, that can help. Then professional institutions like the ICANN and the CIT have also been running some educational activities just also to ramp up capacity, but these are never enough. One thing is we have medium and small size firms, apart from the very big firms. Those other firms are usually more affordable. So beyond the free health check, they are more willing, and their fees, this small business, they definitely need to create a budget, but I don't think it's something that will be too much to pay, so they really need to have somebody handhold it, because I understand the fears that they face.
Thank you so much for that. Definitely we're all counting down. Definitely 2026 is looking like it'll be a very, very interesting year. So many things are happening or starting on the 1st of January, 2026. But what are you seeing for access to finance, for most of these MSMEs in 2026?
Interestingly, the government and a lot of institutions are willing to provide funding. But one thing that has limited access to these funds is formalization, lack of records. And that is where we also come in as professionals, letting these entrepreneurs and founders know that they need to keep records. First, you need to separate your personal affairs from your business affairs. And that is why you actually need to incorporate a business. So you could do a sole proprietorship, right? You could just do a limited liability company, and then make sure you open a bank account and put all of your business cash flows in there. Then keep records. So you could keep records. Manual records are not really reliable. I know that's the age-long one that everybody likes to do. But now that's where digitalization comes into space. Right now, there are many free tools. At least the very first, most of the licenses, they give you some basic access on free tools that you can use. There are many of them. I wouldn't like to mention them, but there are quite many. And we are partners to such businesses. So what those businesses can do is to use some of these tools, right? If you permit me to mention, I could just mention any one of them for people listening, to just track their records on their mobile phones. And then another one thing they can do is from your bank account, you can actually use that to track records. So when you make payments, make sure that you're writing what that payment is for. When inflows are coming in, try and enlighten your customers to put the right descriptions on the payments. when they're making payments, if the inflows are not for business or maybe they are reimbursements, that's one area that usually causes a lot of issues. Ensure that they describe it as such so that they will not be called income. So separate your affairs, keep records, and then keep source documents. So source documents are invoices and receipts that can substantiate your business transactions, because the taxman would not believe your record as much, but they rather would believe more evidences from third parties that have interacted with your business. And with the e-invoicing coming on board as well, although that is for large organizations with 5 billion naira revenue. However, some of these small businesses actually even provide services for these people. So somehow there will be a third-party audit trail that the government can also use to know what's going on in these small businesses.
Right. So much.
And even,
yes, so much to unpack there, but we've run out of time. But I guess at this point, when you're making those payments or receiving payments, it's not by writing, taxman, don't touch my money, that will save you.
No.
Fantastic. All right, we'll continue the conversation. Thank you so much for helping us unpack this. We've run out of time now. Obianuju Nwaobi-Onyekwere, she's the Chief Financial Officer, Manifold Computers Limited. Thank you so much for sharing your day with us, and I'll see you in 2026.
Thank you, Ladi.
Thank you.